You've seen the Holocaust in history books, but there's a disturbing chapter few talk about: entertainment in Nazi concentration camps. Behind the barbed wire of places like Dachau and Buchenwald, prisoners performed under the watchful eye of SS guards, sometimes for survival, sometimes by force. In this dark corner of history, music wasn't just entertainment, it was weaponized. While prisoners risked their lives for moments of underground theater, Nazi commanders blasted propaganda through loudspeakers and used symphony orchestras to drown out the screams of torture. This is the untold story of how art existed in hell when we think of concentration camps, we picture constant suffering. But behind closed doors, a secret world existed where prisoners risked their lives for moments of escape. In Dachau, one of the most strictly controlled camps in the Nazi system, entertainment was banned and dangerous. The SS maintained vigilant oversight, especially because Dachau frequently received outside visitors. Nazi officials were determined not to give any impression that prisoners were being treated humanely, making licensed theatricals completely out of the question. Yet even under these oppressive conditions, prisoners carved out precious moments of creative expression. Their only opportunity came on Sundays, after the morning's grueling camp cleanup and the nerve-wracking roll call. During these brief hours when prisoners were allowed to write letters or read newspapers, something remarkable happened in the shadows of the barracks. An underground performance culture was born. These clandestine shows evolved into a sophisticated system with distinct styles based on political affiliations. Political prisoners, communists, socialists, and opponents of the Nazi regime gravitated toward revolutionary songs and Volkslieder, folk songs, that kept their ideological flames burning. Prisoners composed original songs about their daily struggles, dreams of freedom, and satirical cabarets that mocked their captors through thinly veiled references and double meanings. In a dimly lit corner of the barracks, hundreds of exhausted men would gather around a makeshift stage while lookouts stood guard at strategic positions. The air vibrated with tension. A cough or sudden noise could freeze performers mid-gesture as eyes darted nervously toward the door. These acts of creative defiance carried severe consequences if discovered. One guard appearing at the wrong moment meant brutal punishment for everyone involved. The underground theater scene transformed in May 1938 when thousands of Viennese prisoners arrived following Austria's annexation. This influx brought professional talent to the camp, actors, singers, and composers who had once graced Vienna's celebrated cabarets now performed in Dachau's dangerous makeshift venues. These performances operated with the furtive elegance of a Prohibition-era speakeasy. At the slightest signal of approaching guards, performers scattered, audiences dispersed, and evidence vanished. Within seconds, the vibrant cultural space returned to the bleak reality of camp life. A transformation, perfected through necessity and fear. These performers risked everything because their art offered psychological survival. For brief, precious moments, prisoners could reclaim their humanity in a system designed to strip it away. A singer who had once performed to packed houses in Vienna could momentarily remember his identity beyond prisoner number and uniform. When they performed Jewish cabaret pieces or sang in languages the Reich had banned, they preserved the very cultural heritage the Nazis sought to destroy. Each note and whispered line, a small victory against those who would eradicate not just lives, but civilization itself. While prisoners at Dachau fought to keep their covert performances hidden from their captors, just 30 miles away at Buchenwald, inmates faced the twisted irony of being ordered to entertain the very men who tormented them. The contrast was stark. At Dachau, art represented dangerous resistance. At Buchenwald, it became a tool of humiliation. Buchenwald operated under a chaotic atmosphere largely absent at other camps. Unlike the rigid structure seen elsewhere, this camp functioned at the mercy of what survivors described as a succession of drunken and eccentric SS camp commanders. These unpredictable leaders created an environment where rules changed with their moods, leaving prisoners constantly off balance. This volatility culminated when one commander, in a moment of capricious cruelty, declared a mandatory week of Humor. This was another form of control, forcing starving, brutalized men to produce comedy on command. The SS demanded theatrical productions multiple times daily, with punishment looming over the entire endeavor. To execute this command, SS identified a former compere from a Berlin music hall among the prisoners. This man, once part of Germany's vibrant pre-war cabaret scene, now faced an impossible task, finding talent among Buchenwald's emaciated population. He had to locate jugglers, acrobats, dancers, and comedians from men systematically stripped of their dignity. His position was extraordinarily precarious. Flanked by armed guards watching his every move, he walked an invisible tightrope between compliance and resistance. During his introductions, he employed coded language that mocked the regime right before their eyes. One daring example of his subversion survives. "You know, times don't really change. I remember that when we had the Kaiser, we always had swine pushing us around. Later, when we had the Republic, was it any different? No, we still had swine pushing us around. And what of today?" The question hung in the air, its implication clear to prisoners while evading guards' scrutiny. Each performance carried deadly risk. SS officers sat in the audience, weapons ready, their drunken whims determining whether a joke went too far. One misinterpreted gesture could mean death for the performer or the compere himself. Yet something remarkable emerged. Rather than crushing spirits, these forced shows sparked rebellion. Prisoners developed their own underground theater, with political cabarets and satirical acts mocking camp administration, safely hidden from SS eyes. This clandestine resistance theater grew alongside official performances, creating a dual reality. From these secret shows emerged the Buchenwald song, a defiant anthem that spread through barracks, despite the mortal danger of being caught singing it. Buchenwald's theatrical world existed in parallel universes, performances demanded by capricious SS commanders alongside secret shows created by prisoners for their own spiritual survival. This duality marked a critical difference from Dachau, where performances existed solely as underground resistance initiated by prisoners themselves. The mention of Dachau brings us to perhaps the most perverse contradiction in the Nazi concentration camp system. How could the same regime that burned books and banned degenerate art become obsessed with forcing music into every corner of prisoner existence? The answer reveals a calculated psychological warfare few survivors could forget. In the summer of 1933, as Dachau was still taking shape as the model for future camps, SS leadership made a seemingly innocuous addition to the grounds, a loudspeaker system. This wasn't installed for prisoner comfort or entertainment. Instead, it represented one of the earliest and most sophisticated instruments of control in the Nazi arsenal. Even more cruelly, Jewish prisoners were forced to fund this system through mandatory donations, literally paying for their own psychological torture under threat of severe punishment. The loudspeakers became instruments of relentless indoctrination, broadcasting a carefully curated selection of sounds designed to break spirits and reinforce Nazi ideology. German patriotic songs like the Horst Wessel song and the national anthem blared across the grounds. Military marches such as Fridericus Rex created a constant militaristic atmosphere. The Nazis even corrupted workers' songs, broadcasting Brüder zur Sonne zur Freiheit, a song about brotherhood and freedom, in an environment designed to crush both. The psychological impact was devastating. During Nazi party events, elections, and rallies, all work would deliberately stop. Prisoners stood at attention, forced to absorb speeches and anthems glorifying the very regime that imprisoned them. This wasn't simply annoying background noise, it was a calculated assault on prisoner identity, a constant reminder of their powerlessness against the Nazi machine. Survivor Wenzel Rubner captured the essence of this torment in his testimony. For us, the radio did not mean something like entertainment, but a new form of torment for our souls. The music and propaganda were inescapable, deliberately targeting prisoners' most vulnerable psychological states. Every patriotic German song represented another brick in the wall of isolation, reminding non-German prisoners of their outsider, status in a system designed to break them. Perhaps most disturbing was how camp administrators weaponized music to mask torture. During interrogations, guards would deliberately increase the volume on loudspeakers, using orchestral pieces and martial music to drown out the screams of prisoners being brutalized. This created a horrifying juxtaposition where compositions that might bring joy in the outside world became soundtracks to unspeakable suffering within camp walls. The psychological manipulation extended even to mealtimes. Walter Hornung recalled how music played during meals, supposedly allowing prisoners to enjoy hearing the works of our great composers while eating